That visible dip in the roofline or the outward bow in your sidewall represents a structural failure already in progress. While it's easy to focus on loose screen mesh, ignoring the underlying frame damage guarantees the aluminum will buckle under the pressure of the next major storm. In Florida, these enclosures rarely fail due to a single event. The sag you see is the cumulative result of unverified builder shortcuts and a decade of relentless environmental stress. To permanently restore a sagging enclosure without wasting thousands of dollars, you must address the invisible engineering flaws rather than just treating visible symptoms. Proper enclosures rely on 6005 T5 aluminum, a metal artificially aged in a thermal oven to achieve its required yield strength. To lower production costs, some manufacturers skip the aging process and shave the interior wall thickness down to dangerously thin margins. This chart shows the strict L60 deflection limit. If a 20-foot beam sags over 4 inches, it exceeds serviceability constraints. When undergauged aluminum is forced to span large distances, it bows under its own gravity. This constant downward flex induces severe joint fatigue and material yielding long before a hurricane arrives. An enclosure built with compromised metal is functionally in a state of failure from the day it is installed. The weather simply accelerates the inevitable collapse. During a tropical storm, heavy rain saturates the fiberglass mesh, filling the microscopic gaps until the screen becomes a solid aerodynamic wall. When high winds hit this wet surface, the kinetic energy has nowhere to pass through. This pressure transfers violently from the screen membrane directly into the aluminum framing. Builders use carbon steel screws to lock these joints together, but placing steel against aluminum in salt-laden air creates an electrochemical cell. This reaction initiates galvanic corrosion, rapidly dissolving the steel threads into iron oxide. As the screws lose their shear strength, the connection holes widen and the primary beams slip out of alignment. You can often see the evidence in orange rust streaks bleeding down the white or bronze frames. Fixing this requires isolation technology. Using Nylotech fasteners with non-conductive heads and Protect polymer sleeves ensures zero metal-to-metal contact, neutralizing the corrosion cycle. Without these safeguards, the rain turns your screen into a sail, and the salt air turns your structural screws into an electrochemical battery, mechanically forcing the enclosure to tear itself apart. All wind loads travel down to the base anchors, which must resist massive upward pull-out forces. This is why engineers specify deep epoxy adhesives rather than standard friction-based wedge anchors that can blow out the concrete. Anchoring an enclosure directly to unreinforced pavers or an unpermitted patio is structurally invalid. Without a monolithic concrete footer, hurricane uplift will simply rip the individual pavers off the ground. To stop the lateral sway that leads to sagging, engineers lock the columns into a unified matrix. Low chair rails disrupt the bending moment on the columns, while heavy-duty K-bracing provides the multi-directional rigidity needed to survive lateral gusts. Even with a perfect frame, the screen membrane will fail within 10 years as UV radiation destroys the vinyl. When rescreening, the diameter of the rubber spline must be sized to the exact millimeter of the aluminum channel to prevent the panels from pulling out under load. A permanent enclosure requires a synchronized system: deep chemical roots, rigid diagonal bracing, and a mathematically calibrated skin. Property owners have to weigh the low cost of a rescreen against the massive expense of a full replacement. Structural restoration typically falls in the middle tier, offering a way to save the existing cage. If an upright column is compromised, engineers can utilize sistering. By bolting a matching 6005 T5 beam alongside the original, they can bypass the failure point and restore rigidity without a total roof teardown. However, you must account for the FEMA 50% rule. If the cost of your structural repairs exceeds half the current depreciated value of the enclosure, building officials will legally mandate that you demolish the structure and rebuild it to current 2026 codes. This is the risk of unpermitted work. Installing structural epoxy anchors and calculating wind loads are not DIY tasks. They require signed and sealed engineering plans to avoid subsequent catastrophic failure. Screen Factory Florida engineers enclosures specifically to meet these standards. By utilizing chemical base anchors, isolated stainless fasteners, and integrated K-bracing, they build structures designed to survive the next major hurricane. The structural sag in your enclosure will only continue to worsen as the metal fatigues. Book a free measurement with the experts to identify the root cause before a total replacement becomes your only option.